On a fall day in Texas back in 1996, a rancher and his granddaughter saw something out of place down by a stream. It was the body of a girl, though they didn't realize it at first, mistaking it for a dead calf in the distance. Once they got home, the little girl told her grandfather what she actually saw, and that it had terrified her. The following day, the rancher returned to the spot to take a closer look, and it was a teenager with sandy-colored hair floating along the bank of the river. The police later identified her as 16-year-old Heather Rich, a high school student from a nearby town in Oklahoma, just on the other side of the Texas border. She had been shot multiple times, including one to the head, so her face was hard to recognize. The first way they actually identified her was when her father saw the gold ring she was wearing, which was given to her on her birthday. Heather Rose Rich was born on January 19th of 1980, as the third child of Gail and Dwayne, who had moved to Waurika, Oklahoma back in 1974. The Riches picked Waurika because of its insulating qualities. It reminded them of their hometown of Elgin, Oklahoma. Waurika was a place where kids couldn't get into too much trouble because there wasn't much trouble to get into, or so they thought. Described as a petite beauty with captivating blue-gray eyes and an upbeat personality, Heather was a popular girl in school. Her three brothers were football players, and she was a cheerleader on the sidelines. And Heather was an honors student, a nominee for homecoming queen. However, in the weeks leading up to her tragic end, her behavior had taken a concerning turn. Despite having a cheerful personality and everything going for her, Heather was a teenager out in a town where there wasn't much going on, and sometimes that can be a bad thing. Idle hands are the devil's playground, and with the attention she received from boys at her school, she headed down a path that was less than ideal. Many of the teens in town spent their nights driving around looking to entertain themselves, and often that involved drinking and smoking weed, whatever they could get their hands on. And Heather was just starting to find that friend group that liked to stay out late and cruise around the back alley parking lots and heavily wooded roads looking to kill the boredom. Just a few weeks before she went missing, on September 27th, she was caught for being intoxicated while leading the teams in cheers during a football game. She got suspended for that and almost kicked off the cheerleading team entirely. And this caused problems at home with her parents, who had done everything they could to shield her from these choices and saw them as reckless. On top of that, her father had been severely injured on the job recently and unable to work. As a result, her mother picked up more hours to make up for the lost income, and Heather helped take care of her dad. And all of this put together created for a bit of a stressful environment. The last known sighting of Heather, according to neighbors, was on Wednesday, October 2nd, just a little bit before midnight, when she was seen sneaking out of her bedroom window. The following day, she missed a morning appointment to see a therapist, something her parents insisted on after her school suspension. The Riches tried to file a missing persons report, but the police wouldn't do it because they thought there was a good chance she had run away. And so, they were left on their own to drive around town looking for their little girl. Rumors circulated in the days following her disappearance. By the time the police did get involved, the stories from those they spoke with led in different directions. The neighbor, of course, said they saw her leaving through her window. Some said they had seen Heather that night walking down the highway, trying to thumb a ride. Another witness said she saw her in a truck with two boys. And then there was her sighting at a phone booth on the outskirts of town, and her being spotted at a strip club. And so, no one had a straight answer, and it wouldn't be until weeks later that they would find out why. While search parties, police, and sniffer dogs scoured the town of Waurika for any sign of the girl, it would be 6 days later and 35 miles south, where she would be found by chance. That's when the rancher and his granddaughter discovered Heather's body down in Belknap Creek underneath a bridge. The teen had been shot a total of 9 times with a shotgun, with one blast going right into the back of her head. Her body had then been dumped in Texas, just over the border from Oklahoma, meaning it was likely the perpetrators were actually from Oklahoma, and hoping that if she were discovered, then this would be a case that the cops in Texas would take over. But police aren't that stupid. Murdering a teenager in cold blood like that isn't something a tight-knit community like Waurika is going to let slip through the cracks. Mayor Biff Eck said no one could understand how something like this could happen to someone from our town. So it was all hands on deck. They enlisted the assistance of the Texas Rangers and the FBI, and soon agents swarmed the town, talking to hundreds of people in a search for answers. Of those individuals questioned, a lot of them were Heather's peers who remained tight-lipped or perhaps even knowingly gave false leads to try and throw them off the trail. The authorities uncovered essentially a seedy drug culture in the town, where no one wanted to be a snitch. There were several meth labs and drug-dealing houses scattered throughout the area. This revelation shocked the Riches, who had raised their children in the town without realizing what was happening right under their noses. They discovered Heather had dabbled in methamphetamine and went after a local drug dealer thinking he may have had something to do with this crime, but ultimately he had a solid alibi. They then focused on another potential lead among many, that on the night she snuck out of the house, it was to go hang out at Josh Bagwell's place. And Josh went to Heather's school. He was a couple years older, and he was known as a rich kid around town. His parents had a big house and a lot of cars, and on top of it all, they didn't keep a watchful eye over him, and so he had a lot of opportunity to get whatever he wanted and do whatever he wanted without facing any consequences. When the police knocked on his door, he told them he hadn't seen Rich for at least a week prior to her disappearance, and that on the night she went missing, he was hanging out with Randy Wood all night, drinking whiskey until 6 in the morning. Randy Wood was also a student, the captain of the football team in fact, and he was crowned homecoming king just the night after Heather had been killed. Interestingly, he had also dated Heather for about 5 months before he broke it off with her, after hearing she had been skinny dipping with some other boys at a pool party. Randy came from a poor family, but he was popular, of course. What drew him to Josh was his money, and what drew Josh to him was that everybody liked Randy. And Randy corroborated the story to police that he and Josh had been hanging out that night, but something about him didn't sit right with the investigators. He appeared nervous, and they felt there was something more he wasn't telling them. Meanwhile, the ballistics came in from the bullets used against Heather. They were buckshot and wadding consistent with ammo that would be used in a Mossberg M9 shotgun. And just the day before her murder, police found that at a local hardware store, Josh and another man named Curtis Gimble had purchased the ammo, and it was discovered that Gimble owned a Mossberg M9. Now, Gimble was a high school dropout and all-around bad dude by all accounts. He was known to have killed livestock just for the fun of it, and had managed to escape any youth detention center he had ever been in. With this information, by October 24th, police arrested the 3 young men and brought them in for an interrogation. Josh invoked his right to remain silent, but Gimble and Randy did not, and their stories pretty much were the same. And they explained that Heather had left her house to meet up with Josh for a date, at which point he fed her a steady stream of alcohol until she was pretty intoxicated. At that point, he took advantage of her for several hours, and then the 2 of them met up with Randy and Gimble. And Josh bragged to them about having his way with her. Still drinking, she eventually passed out. And Randy and her had never gone all the way when they were dating, and part of him resented her for that. And so he took her to the back seat of a truck, and when he was done, it was then Gimble's turn. Randy and Josh then began freaking out about what they had all done, saying they were going to get in a lot of trouble and feeling trapped. Randy brought Heather's passed out body to the back of Josh's truck and shot her. Randy says that once they brought her to the bridge, Josh and Randy also shot her, and so they were all in it together. Heather Rich was kidnapped by the boys in Oklahoma, but the murder happened in Texas, and so that's where the trials would occur. Each of the three went to trial separately, and seeing as Gimbel had such a checkered past, he went first because they figured his case would be a slam dunk. Gimbel was given the choice to plead guilty and avoid the death penalty, or face trial and possibly receive capital punishment for the crime. And he pled guilty and then given a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2026. Josh's family paid for a high-priced lawyer, and they set the stage that Heather was the problem in this whole affair. That her own problems and promiscuity were what led to the crime occurring in the first place. In the end, though, it didn't work. Josh also received a life sentence. Behind bars, he's got many tattoos, attempted to escape prison, instigate a prison riot, and he attacked a guard as well. Basically doing everything he can to seem like he's a much bigger problem than he actually is. And Randy, his trial was the biggest media sensation, and he refused a plea deal, saying that he was the one that murdered Rich alone, as he wanted the world to know that all three had taken part in this crime. And as a result, he too got a life sentence and will become eligible for parole in 2036. This whole tragedy could have been avoided at so many different points in time. It's hard to say where it all went wrong exactly, but it ended up being the perfect storm of personalities in Gimbel, Josh, and Randy who would come together and, without even realizing it, push one another to take the next step, one foot at a time, to commit this brutal and senseless crime. And so take note about who you decide to hang around with in this life and who you call your friends. Because in the end, they might be a problem. And then again, maybe it's you that's actually the issue. What's going on, everyone? It's Andrew, and on June 7th, mark those iCals down because the feature film that the Scary Mysteries team and myself wrote and directed will be available to stream on Amazon, iTunes, and Apple TV, Google Play, and Microsoft Xbox. And this movie was not made for the general public at all. It's pretty dark, but also a fun ride. I made it specifically for you, the real hardcore true crime fans. So if you like this channel and you'll really enjoy An Angry Boy, then I hope you'll go check it out on June 7th. Here's the trailer, and then it's back to the episode.
I'm not sure where all this is gonna take me, but I do know there's bad things happening out there. Terrible things no one really seems to care about. Truth is, maybe they just don't want to know, and I'm gonna do something about it. Mom?
Believe in karma, Owen? Oh, I do. This is what it looks like. This is Cameron. I thought it'd be fun to bring him up here to camp with us.
It is so nice to have you here. See you in a minute.
You're just looking at it the wrong way. We're all of us, the special ones.
You're telling me you, a kid from Ozone Park, you was gonna kill some stone cold killers, bro?
These guys have been out there doing God knows what for too long.
Where is he?
This is the start of something beautiful.
I have tried to make this house a home, time and time again.
How have you been?
Not good, Doc.